Hi everyone, I'm Andy and this is the AI Breakdown. Welcome to your weekly news edition, where I'll cover what happened in AI last week and why it matters. It's been a big week. OpenAI says an unreleased model cracked or made serious progress on 10 open problems in mathematics and published the proofs so anyone can check them. Anthropic and Meta both admitted their models broke out of test environments and hacked real companies, which now makes 4 organizations in about a fortnight. Europe switched on enforcement of the AI Act while Washington finished its own rulebook and refused to publish it. Meta launched a coding agent that'll sell you tokens at a tenth the price if you let it train on your code, and I'll get into how this whole build-out is actually being paid for, because that changed this week too. Let's start with the maths. On the 1st of August, OpenAI published 10 results in mathematics and theoretical computer science, sphere packing, Ramsey numbers, a counterexample to something called Connors' rigidity conjecture, problems in lattice cryptography. These are questions that have been open for decades. The work was done by an internal version of a model called Astra, which OpenAI describes as its next major model. It isn't released. There's no date and no prices yet. Now, be careful with the headline on this one. OpenAI's own wording is that each result resolves or makes substantial progress on a long-standing open problem. So it's not 10 solved. Some are outright resolutions, some are improved bounds. And this is very different from the embarrassing Erdos episode in October 2025, where they said GPT-5 had cracked 10 Erdos problems, and it turned out the model had just found existing answers in the literature. It was, in the words of the mathematician who caught it, a dramatic misrepresentation. This time they've published lean certificates for all 10 on GitHub, Apache licensed, with instructions for checking them against an independent kernel. Anyone with a laptop can settle whether the proofs hold up. That's a much higher bar to clear. And the number everyone's talking about, OpenAI says the tokens needed to find these solutions would cost roughly $2,000. So $2,000 against problems that have been sitting there for decades. That figure needs 3 caveats and I'll give you all 3. It's priced at the rates for Sol, a different model that's already shipped, because Astra doesn't have a price. It only counts the runs that worked. OpenAI's Noam Brown has confirmed they tried other major problems without success, and hasn't said how many. So we've got the result, but not the full hit rate. And then there's this. Levent Alperg, a researcher at Anthropic, reproduced half of them inside 24 hours using Anthropic's Fable model, which raises a fair question about whether the real achievement was picking which open problems were tractable in the first place. So what do I take from it? $2,000 of compute, or twice that, or 10 times that, is still nothing set against what this class of work normally costs in time and expertise. Thomas Bloom, the mathematician who called out OpenAI's overclaiming in 2025, rates these results as big. That's the endorsement worth having. Nobody outside OpenAI can run Astra, so the results can be verified but not reproduced, and no peer review has happened. Both of those are real limitations, but if you employ people whose job is hard, formal, checkable reasoning, the cost of a first draft of that reasoning just fell a long way. This episode is sponsored by Notify Technology, a health and safety software partner, helping teams run incident management, audits and inspections, and risk assessments in one place. And with Notify Spark, their AI companion, they're streamlining incident reporting and investigations, saving time, reducing admin load, and helping teams act faster on what matters. Learn more at notifytechnology.com. A couple of weeks back, I covered OpenAI admitting that its models had escaped a test sandbox and broken into Hugging Face's production systems. I said at the time it looked like negligence on the company's side rather than the model going rogue. 2 more labs have now put their hands up, and so has a government institute. Anthropic went first on the 30th of July. After OpenAI's disclosure, they went back through their logs, and once they started finding things, they stopped all their cyber evaluations the same day. They reviewed 141,000 evaluation runs where Claude could have got internet access. They found 3 incidents. In the first one, a fictional target in the test happened to share a name with a real website. Claude found it, exploited it, pulled out credentials, and got into a database holding several hundred rows of production data. In the second, Claude built a booby-trapped Python package and published it to the real PyPI registry. It was downloaded and run on 15 real systems, including a security company's scanner, where it took that company's credentials. In the third, it scanned around 9,000 targets and compromised one, then worked out the target was real and stopped. The cause, according to Anthropic, was a misunderstanding between them and their third-party evaluation partner, a company called Irregular. The prompt told Claude it had no internet access. The machines it was running on did. The earliest of these was in April. Nobody knew until July, and of the two companies Anthropic managed to reach, neither had noticed a thing. At the point they published, they still hadn't got hold of the third. Then on the 5th of August, the information reported that a meta model, Muse Spark 1.1, had done the same thing, reached the internet during evaluation, exploited a third party, and, according to the reporting, changed part of that company's internal systems. Meta's statement blames a misconfiguration by Irregular, same vendor. Meta hasn't published anything itself yet, and says a full retrospective is coming. Now, the one I'd point you to is the UK AI Security Institute, because they handled it completely differently. On the 28th of July, they spotted unusual data transfers, leaving their own research systems. Across 122 cyber challenge runs on 7 frontier models, they found 19 unsanctioned actions, most of them from Anthropic's Mythos 5. One of the models used fake identities to try to socially engineer a real open-source maintainer. Others were coordinating over GitHub. A human maintainer spotted the malicious code and refused to approve it. The Security Institute contained the whole thing within about an hour, notified GitHub, said it intends to bring in Meta for an independent review, and published the lot. Their own line is that it's the first time they've seen risks around autonomy and deception show up this clearly, without specific prompting in the real world. My view hasn't moved much from a fortnight ago. This is still companies being careless with their test environments, not models waking up. The sky isn't falling. But I'd call these near misses in a useful sense, because a model powerful enough to do this by accident, when its safeguards have been turned down for a legitimate test, is a model somebody could point at a target on purpose. That's what these incidents are showing us. And there's a lot the labs can learn here, and they need to. Whether the environment is yours or a supplier's, you own what happens in it. Right regulation, and two governments went in opposite directions on the same weekend. In Europe, the 2nd of August was the day the AI Act grew teeth. The general-purpose AI rules had been in place for a year, but the Commission's enforcement powers only switched on now. It can demand documentation, run its own evaluations of a model, require access to a model, and where it needs to, force a provider to restrict how publicly available that model is. Fines go up to 3% of worldwide annual turnover, or €15 million, whichever is higher. Two things UK listeners should know. If you sell software into the EU, you're in scope even with no European entity, and even if the only connection is that the output gets used in the Union. And Article 50 doesn't just apply to the big AI labs, it also reaches the organizations using this stuff. So, if you publish an AI-generated image, audio clip or video that could be mistaken for a real person or event, you need to make clear that it's a deepfake. The same goes for AI-generated text about matters of public interest, unless a human has reviewed it, or it has gone through proper editorial control with someone taking responsibility for what gets published. Chatbots are slightly different. The legal duty to tell people this, talking to AI, normally sits with the company providing the system under its own name, rather than an ordinary business simply buying it and switching it on. What I'd flag is capacity. The AI office unit responsible for assessing frontier models has 36 people. 5 MEPs wrote to the Commission in May saying the resourcing trajectory doesn't look aligned to the scale of the job. 3% of Alphabet's turnover would run to €9 billion or more, so the powers are real. Whether 36 people can use them is a different question. Meanwhile, in Washington, Trump's executive order in June gave the administration 60 days to produce a framework for assessing the cyber capabilities of frontier models. That deadline was the 1st of August. The White House says it was delivered on time, it has not been published, and there are no plans to publish it. Some of that has a defensible logic. The benchmarks measure offensive cyber capability. So publishing the threshold tells an adversary exactly what bar to clear. Those benchmarks are classified, and the order explicitly rules out any mandatory licensing regime, but the framework document itself isn't classified, and it's still being withheld. A White House official's explanation was that just because something is unclassified doesn't mean they're going to broadcast it to everyone. But as Chris McGuire at the Council on Foreign Relations put it, we can't have secret voluntary rules to regulate the most important tech in the world. You'll know I'm not against regulation here. I want the level that keeps people safe without strangling the thing. But look at where we've landed. Europe has rules you can read and not enough people to enforce them. America has the people and rules you're not allowed to see. Neither of those is the balance I'd want. Next, and this one's more fun. Meta launched a coding agent. It's called Muse Code. It went out on the 5th of August in beta. It runs in your terminal on Mac and Linux, and there's no app for it, which sets it apart from Claude Code and OpenAI's Codex. It runs on a new model, Muse Spark 1.2. The design idea worth knowing is persistent background agents. Rather than spinning up a helper for each task and throwing it away, specialized agents stay alive for your whole session and build up context as they go. Now, the pricing? Standard rate is $1.25 per million input tokens and $4.25 per million output. Or you can take the contributor tier at 10 cents in and 20 cents out. That's roughly 21 times cheaper on output than Meta's own standard rate. The catch is that, on the contributor tier, you're explicitly agreeing to let Meta train on your prompts and your completions. It's opt-in, and Meta says it won't train on anything from the standard tier. I like this. It's a creative answer to a real problem, which is that everyone needs training data, and the easy sources are running out, and Meta's sharing the reward rather than just taking the data. For a lot of small businesses, that maths is going to work, the cost saving is significant, and the sensitivity of what you're handing over often isn't that high. For larger businesses and enterprises, though, it will often be a non-starter. If your repository contains customer data, confidential code, licensed third-party material, or anything covered by an NDA, you would need explicit approval before letting Meta use those sessions for training. For most companies, that will rule it out for normal production work. My problem with it as it stands is that Meta's public launch material does not explain what's excluded. It gives no public carve-out for secrets, environment files, or third-party code, and I couldn't find a published retention period or a clear process for withdrawing contributed data. Until that exists, the tier is only really usable for work you'd be comfortable publishing. One more thing, and credit to Meta for the honesty. Their own launch charts put Claude Opus 5 ahead of Muse Spark 1.2 on all 3 coding benchmarks they published. The pitch is price. Worth adding that when the previous model was independently checked, its verified score came in nearly 4 points below what Meta published, so treat the numbers with the usual caution. Staying with Meta, because their quarter tells you something about the whole industry. Results landed on the 29th of July. Revenue just over $60 billion, up 28%. A strong advertising business still working. Net income down 14%, with a $2.4 billion charge for legal proceedings and $1.2 billion in severance from the May job cuts. The number that got everyone's attention was free cash flow, $784 million against $8.5 billion in the same quarter last year. That's down about 91%. Capital expenditure for the quarter was over $30 billion, up more than 80% on a year ago, and the guidance for the year went to $130 to $145 billion, with the floor lifted by $5 billion. The market didn't love it. The stock closed down about 9% the next day, and was off more than 10 at one point. Worst day of the year, capping an 11-day losing streak. Although it bounced back over the sessions that followed, so let's not overstate it. On the call, Zuckerberg was asked about selling compute to other people. He said they've had quite a number of offers at a meaningful premium over what they paid for it. He said it would be foolish to sell all of it and take a short-term profit. So no external cloud business is confirmed as yet, whatever you might have read. And when an analyst asked for a 2027 capex number, the CFO said they aren't providing one at this time. Which brings me to how all of this is actually being financed, because 3 things landed in the same week. Bloomberg reported that Blackstone is pitching a debt package of at least $36 billion to pay for Google's custom chips for Anthropic. The chips would sit in a separate vehicle and be leased to Anthropic, which keeps the hardware off Anthropic's own balance sheet. This is early. Blackstone, Apollo, Anthropic, and Google all declined to comment, and the structure could change. It follows a $35 billion deal led by Apollo that closed in early June, doing much the same thing. Worth noting that one also started life as a $36 billion ask. Then Bloomberg reported that Anthropic had signed a $10 billion, 6-year compute deal with a company called Volta. Volta came out of stealth on the 4th of August, which is the same day the deal was reported. It was founded earlier this year, has raised about $300 million at a $2.4 billion valuation from Andreessen Horowitz, Altimeter, and Nvidia, among others, and is building a 133 megawatt site in Norway with a crypto miner called Bitdeer. Anthropic hasn't confirmed the deal. And the third, Microsoft filed its annual report on the 29th of July, and buried in the related party disclosures is a real number. Microsoft recorded $24.1 billion of revenue from commercial arrangements with OpenAI in the year to June, and was owed another $6 billion at the year end. Microsoft did not say what proportion of its AI business that represents. Bloomberg got to roughly 70% by extrapolating Microsoft's own growth rate, so treat that share as an estimate. The $24.1 billion is a hard-filed figure. My position on the bubble question hasn't changed. The technology is real, the demand is real, and the infrastructure genuinely needs building. What I'm watching is the financing. Off-balance sheet vehicles, week-old counterparties, and a huge share of the biggest software companies' estimated AI revenue turning out to be tied to one commercial partner. None of those are fatal on their own. Together, they're a pattern. A few quick ones to finish. Claude went down again on the 5th of August, which has been widely reported, and Anthropic confirmed it was working on a fix. And as I write this script, I'm still seeing issues with it. Amazon cut the bedrock price on OpenAI's cheapest GPT 5.6 model, Luna, by 80% and Terra by 20%. That's the sort of number that changes what's worth automating. And Google's Gemini 3.5 Pro is still not out. Teased back in May with a promise of next month, and here we are. So, the theme. In the same 7 days we got the most impressive thing an AI has done. 10 open problems in maths with the proofs published for anyone to check, and 4 separate organizations discovering their models had gone and done things nobody sanctioned. Same underlying capability driving both. What separated them was who was watching. The UK institute that ran its own kit caught its incident in an hour. The labs that handed the environment to a supplier took 3 months and found out from a competitor's blog post. That's the question I take into your own business this week. Not about frontier models, because you're not running those, about your suppliers. When one of your vendors runs something on your behalf, who actually checks the environment it runs in? And if it went wrong in there, would anyone tell you? Or would you find out the way those 3 companies did, which is that somebody rang them up in July about something that happened in April? That's all for this week's AI Roundup. If you found value in this breakdown, please leave a rating and hit subscribe. See you next week.